hearing from Israel and Rafah overnight. And the context of all of this is there are supposed to be negotiations going on vis-a-vis a truce deal. How likely is it at this point that we are going to get a truce deal between Israel and Hamas?
Well, nice to see you, Jumanna, and hello from London. Unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic about a breakthrough on the talks and a ceasefire, even though the situation is incredibly urgent and both Hamas and the Netanyahu government face huge pressure from their erstwhile supporters. And of course, the humanitarian situation is absolutely dire. The reason is that for neither side have the costs of this conflict and frankly, the risk of alienating their supporters become too high, right? I call it Schrodinger's ceasefire. Now you see it, now you don't.
Well, Israel's goals have been, one of the goals obviously is to neutralize Hamas, the other to bring back the hostages. Should this ceasefire actually be agreed to, what does that tell you about their efficacy at implementing one of the goals? Because 7 months in, Hamas are still very alive and present.
Well, that's right. And there's been a lot of discussion about whether, by the defined, the stated objectives, whether the Israeli government's operation in Gaza can ever, really be effective because, as has been said, you can't eliminate an idea. And with that in mind, there will always be supporters for movements like Hamas and its ilk. So with that in mind, I'm not confident about a ceasefire, perhaps a pause. But as we well know, ceasefires are historically a chance to rearm. And that's why I think we see both sides dragging their feet. For Netanyahu, this conflict is existential. When the war ends, his political career is finished.
Let me ask you about the broader implications for the region. Bloomberg and other outlets have been reporting that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia may be close to a defense deal, a normalization deal, ultimately a pathway to normalization between Saudi and Israel. What would that mean for the region, and what do you think the likelihood of that actually getting through Congress is at this point?
Well, it's incredibly compelling, isn't it? That the idea that the blockages in the Middle East that have kept it from, benefiting from wider regional integration for so long could actually be overcome. And yet we have the same obstacle that we faced for so many decades now between Israel and Palestinians. The deal that's been presented is interesting to me for a number of reasons. And, we have to remember that we're in an era of the revival of great power politics, right? So that the influence that we see, the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia is a defense relationship. The Saudis and other GCC states look to Washington for security, and they want to keep the door open to China for commercial relations. This proposed deal between Washington and Riyadh is part of that. What's different from where we were in the autumn of last year, when a similar breakthrough seemed possible, is that the Palestinian issue is back on the table.
Yeah. Well, you have coined this period in history the geopolitical risk supercycle. Why do you think this period of tension is so much more pronounced than previous episodes of flaring up of geopolitical tensions within the region and around the world?
This is my thesis. I came out with it before tensions reignited in the Middle East. And I think it's very important for investors and observers to understand that we are looking at a period of a structural increase in conflict. We can trace this back to around 2012. Conflicts are longer, they're more lethal, and they have more third parties involved, to my previous point. On the other side, we have fewer tools and interventions to help absorb the friction, whether that's liquidity from central banks or coordination between the international community. And when we have these two factors at play, and for an extended period, as I see it, we get more of the kinds of disruptions, the event risks that we're seeing now.